Hey friends, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, crazy people, and everything in between. So as usual, let's get right into today's Reddit posts. My ex proposed. I said no. He is now talking about suing me. Me and this guy were together for 3 years. We're 19 now. We never talked about the future until a year in. Before then, I'd tried to discuss it and he would change the subject. In short, I wanted kids. He didn't. I wanted to stay in Ireland. He didn't. I wanted to get married. He didn't. When I realized it was a bad match, I broke it off, but he asked to get back together, saying we were too young to worry about the future, and we got back together. This happened a few times over the next 18 months. In this time, we probably spent more time apart than together. We knew early on that we wanted different things, and while marriage and kids are something I would want further down the line, I wasn't concerned about his open dislike of marriage and kids, because 19 is too young to get married anyway. If I were dating him 10 or 15 years from now and he didn't want to get married, then I might have an issue. But when I'm barely out of my teens, it's not a huge concern, and just loving him and wanting to be with him is enough. When I went to see him this time, I was again considering breaking up with him. Aside from the long-term issues, he is also inconsiderate and has a mean streak that I really don't like. So when I arrived at his place, mentally debating breaking up with him for good this time, and he told me he wanted to take me out to dinner, I assumed he wanted to break up too, publicly, so I wouldn't cause a scene. I don't normally cause a scene, but being in public tends to prevent yelling, and we both yell every time we break up. In the last year, he has asked me 2 things that, looking back now, stand out to me. First, he asked about jewelry, what kind of stuff I liked, and what my taste was. I assumed it was because my birthday was coming up and he was getting me a bracelet or something. So I told him simple and delicate, silver or steel rather than gold. If there was a color, then blue. Nothing flashy or expensive, as both my job prefers plain jewelry and it's just my personal preference. I also said go cheap. The other thing he asked me was how I felt about public proposals. I told him immediately that I personally dislike them, as I felt I wouldn't be able to say no, even if I wanted to. I feel like public proposals are okay when they've been specifically requested and agreed on, but one that's totally out of the blue is not okay at all. I assumed he was asking about this because his friend had just proposed to his girlfriend of several years, publicly, and she'd accepted but admitted to him after that she would have preferred something private. I never thought in a million years that he would propose. So you can imagine my shock when we went to dinner and the first thing he did was propose. The ring was huge, gold, gaudy, red gems around a diamond, and the whole thing was the size and shape of a Super Bowl ring. He got on one knee and held it out to me. We were in the middle of this popular restaurant and the place was packed. Everyone there could see what was going on and weren't even trying to hide that they were looking at us. I said no. Well, I didn't so much say no. I ran out of the restaurant. He drove me there, so I got a cab back and drove home that night. I realized running out wasn't the best thing to do, but I didn't know what else to do. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, and all I knew was that I didn't want to marry him or accept his proposal. I felt like I couldn't speak. I was so upset about the whole thing. So I just got up and ran. I just want to take the opportunity to say here that I really don't care about the rings. Honestly, when I want to get married, which is absolutely not when I'm 19 years old, the right person could just turn to me and say, "Want to get married?" And I'd say yes. I wouldn't even need a ring. I know I'm focusing on the ring and the public proposal a lot, but that's only because of 1, how far away it was from what I'd told him my taste was, and 2, what happened next. I didn't hear from him until a few weeks later. He said that he thought a proposal was something I'd want, but he saw now that it wasn't. He said that he was out of pocket for the rings. He'd bought us both the same one and gotten them engraved. He linked me to the jeweler's website, and the ring was up for 1,450 euros, about $1,650 or 1,300 pounds. When I asked why he was telling me this, he said that he'd hoped I would cover the cost of mine. He said that as they'd been engraved, he couldn't get a refund. He'd hoped that I would say yes to the proposal, in which case he wouldn't have asked me to pay, but I said no. He also said I'd embarrassed him by saying no in public, and should have said yes, and if I was really against it, waited to say no when we were alone. We both live in small towns where gossip spreads at church. Enough people were at the restaurant that night that both of us got asked about it at church on Sunday. He has since messaged me saying he's debating calling in a lawyer to sue me for the cost of my ring, 1,450 euros. And he also says that I have caused him emotional distress by turning him down in public, and have publicly humiliated him for both rejecting his proposal in public and leaving him to deal with church gossip, which I had no part in spreading. He says he can also get some money off me over those two things, so the 1,450 euros for what he spent on my ring, and extra money for emotional distress and public humiliation. I think his legal claims are all bullcrap, and he wouldn't have a leg to stand on in a court of law, but I am not a law student or a lawyer. He is studying law currently and has an internship at a legal firm. What do I do about all this? Edit. His mother has reached out to me apologizing for her son's actions. She has said that nothing will come of this and that she has raised an idiot. Yeah, he was definitely trying to use the fact that he was a law student to try to intimidate OP into paying him. He probably knew that there wasn't any case he could make under those pretenses, so I don't think he actually ever intended to sue her or anything like that. He was just trying to scare OP into coughing up the money. But damn, OP, you really did dodge a bullet there. If someone would go after you like that over such a petty thing, for simply rejecting a proposal, how do you think that marriage would turn out? Not good, that's for sure. Calling the cops on my mother. So I, 22 female, received a visit from my mom for New Year's. She came with one of my cousins, and we hung out for a couple of days, and it was great. The only time things were bad was when she asked if I could loan her about $500, and she promised to cash at me the money back when she got paid next time. I told her no. She tried to argue with me, but I shut her down and she let it go. A week later, I noticed my credit card was missing. I don't use it very often, usually just for a couple automatic bills. I logged onto my account to pay my balance since my check came through that morning, and I saw that my balance was much higher than I expected. There were 3 charges I expected: my electric bill, my phone bill, and some gas, and then several charges that I knew weren't from me. They were for fast food, clothing places, etc. I thought it might be a glitch, so I called my credit card company and checked my wallet for my card. I realized it was missing, and a nice customer service rep helped me with that whole process. But then I started walking through everyone my wallet had been around, and every place it had been left since my last physical use of it. I ended up texting my mom because it was stressing me out, and I felt like I needed to talk to one of my parents, but Dad and I aren't on great terms. When I told my mom what happened, she told me not to worry and that it wasn't stolen. She had just borrowed it. To be honest, I did lose my cool once I realized she wasn't joking. She insisted she'd cash at me the money when she gets paid the next day, and that she thought she'd be able to handle it before I even noticed. I told her that's not acceptable and to cut up my card. I deactivated it anyway. She got upset and told me to stop throwing a fit, and that she can't believe I'm being such a brat about helping her. Things escalated from there, and I did call her some names before telling her to not contact or come around me and hanging up. After that, I called the police, both in my area and in hers, to see which precinct I needed to file charges with. My mom has blown up my phone so much since this that I've had to block her, and she is posting all over Facebook about how I'm getting her thrown back in jail just for borrowing some money, and how she can't understand how she raised such a stingy child. Neighbors arrested after the failure of much compromise, warnings, and attempts at peaceful resolution. My wife and I moved out here to the middle of nowhere, bought an unzoned vacant property. We got all the legalities figured out, got permits, and built our house out here. The previous owner apparently intended to create a large public outdoor pool. They built a huge pool enclosure, huge pool, but then abandoned the project and sold the property. They also had a bunch of neighbor issues we inherited. Our neighbors thought the pool enclosure/pool was an eyesore. We agreed with them and made it clear that we were figuring out how to correct it. We ended up filling in the pool, restoring the enclosure to make it like a greenhouse, and created a huge vivaria. Neighbors still had issues, and it took us until this point to realize that they were trespassing onto the property to examine what we were doing. We had a genuinely friendly conversation about the property lines, got documentation from the county about it, and thought we solved their problems. We didn't, and they still complained. Knowing they climbed over the fence again, we asked them nicely to knock it off. They ended up putting no trespassing signs up facing our property. We had another conversation. We put our own no trespassing signs up, and we planted some tall hedges and wildflowers to create another barrier. That was supposed to be the final warning, but we ended up giving several more final warnings. About a month ago, we had the county police trespass the entire family, make them leave, and make it clear that they'll be arrested if they come back. About 2 weeks ago, the neighborhood's 15 and 17-year-old came back onto the property, and we had them arrested for trespassing. A few days after that, we had the neighbor couple arrested for sneaking on. About 3 days ago, we had the neighbors arrested again after banging on our front door yelling at us for having their kids arrested previously. They seem to have an issue with everything we do, and are even mailing us letters about what they don't like. Man angrily insists I put a leash on a dog that's not my dog. I was doing my usual evening walk about the campus of Caltech a couple nights ago, with my earbuds in, listening to an Audible book. A man stopped right in front of me and yelled, "Take your earbuds out." I took one out. He said in an aggressive, angry tone, "You can't have your dog off leash here. Put a leash on your dog." I said, very calmly, "I don't have a dog." The man gave this guffaw of disbelief and gestured at something behind me. He said, "Do you have a leash with you? I don't see a leash. You can't walk a dog here off leash." By this time, I had a good idea what was going on. I walk at Caltech all the time. I see certain animals pretty often. I turned to look, and yes, it was just what I thought. I said, "That's not a dog. That's a coyote. It's a wild animal." For a long second, the man stared at me. Then he stared at the coyote. Then he made a kind of, noise. He turned around and started half walking, half running away, from both me and the coyote. I almost called after him. Never run from a wild predator. But I didn't. Edited to add a photo link. Note, this photo was taken at about 9 p.m. It was dark, but my iPhone plus some area lighting makes it look like it was daylight. Alright guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. And as always, be sure to like and subscribe for more Reddit stories. So take care, have a nice day, and I'll see you next time.